For 40 years, Richard Calloway woke up at 5:15 in the morning and drove the same route through the same part of Dayton, Ohio. Past the same gas station where he bought coffee every day. On his last day at the plant, his co-workers threw him a small party in the break room. They handed him a plaque with his name on it, and the years, 1981 to 2021, pressed into a rectangle of wood and brass. The next morning, for the first time in 4 decades, nobody expected him anywhere. His wife later told their daughter that she noticed it within the first week. Richard would get up at 5:15 out of habit, get dressed, and then sit at the kitchen table with nothing in front of him. He was not reading or watching anything, just sitting there, like a man waiting for a bus that had been canceled. Retirement was supposed to be the reward. So why, for so many men, does it feel like disappearing? To understand that, you have to go back to the middle of the 20th century, to the factories and office buildings and construction sites of post-war America. This was the era that built the mythology of the working man. You clocked in, you provided, you earned your place at the table. Your job was not just what you did, it was who you were. The generation that came home from World War II stepped into a country that was building itself from the ground up. New highways, new suburbs, new industries. The GI Bill sent millions of men into trades and professions, and the economy rewarded them for staying put. You found a company, you gave it your best years, and in return it gave you a pension, a title, and a community. The men who poured concrete for the interstate highway system, who welded steel in the auto plants of Detroit, who sold insurance out of the same downtown office for 3 decades. These men were not just employees. They were participants in a national story about what it meant to be a man. The company Christmas party and the Union Hall and the crew you ate lunch with every day for 20 years were not just workplace perks. For men who were never taught to build friendships outside of functional settings, these were their entire social worlds. The bar after the shift at the Ford plant in Dearborn was not recreational. It was relational. That is where bonds formed, where news was shared, where men felt known. And at the center of it all was a question that became the backbone of American male identity. 4 words that carried more weight than anyone stopped to examine. What do you do? Not what do you care about or what makes you feel alive, but what do you do? As if the doing was the person. As if the job title was the whole answer. Psychologists have a term for this kind of total identification with a single role. They call it identity foreclosure, the process of committing to one path so completely that you stop developing other parts of yourself. For decades, that commitment was celebrated. The 40-year man, the loyal employee, the provider who never missed a day. But nobody talked about what happens when the role ends, and no replacement is waiting. The gold watch ceremony tells you everything you need to know about how American culture understood retirement. It was a ritual of honor. You put in the time, you earned the prize, and the prize was freedom from the alarm clock, the commute, and the boss. But freedom is a complicated gift when you have spent your entire adult life inside a structure that told you where to be, what to do, and who you were while doing it. The first Monday is where it hits. There is no alarm. There is no route to drive. The coffee shop near the old plant is still there, but going at 5:30 in the morning now feels strange instead of automatic. The regulars are different people at different hours. The woman at the register might not even be working that shift. Some men describe the first week of retirement as a vacation, a long exhale after decades of holding your breath. The second week starts to feel different. The house is quiet during the day in a way it never was on weekends, because weekends had a shape to them. They had errands, projects, the rhythm of time that belonged to you. Monday through Friday, though, was always someone else's time. And now it is yours. All of it. And the weight of that freedom is heavier than anyone warned you about. The phone does not ring with work calls. The inbox goes still. The calendar sits empty. And a man who has been in motion for 40 years suddenly has to sit with a question he has never been asked to answer. Now what? For a while, the answer is projects around the house. The garage gets organized. The gutters get cleaned. The fence gets repainted. There is a list, and for a few weeks, the list provides a kind of structure. But lists end. And when the last task is crossed off, the silence comes back louder than before, filling the rooms of a house that suddenly feels much larger during the daytime than it ever did at night. Research from the Institute of Economic Affairs in the United Kingdom found that retirement increases the probability of clinical depression by roughly 40%. A study published in the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health followed thousands of workers at Shell Oil Company and found that employees who retired at 55 had significantly higher mortality rates than those who retired at 65. The data pointed in a direction that the glossy retirement planning brochures never mention. For certain people, stopping work does not extend life, it shortens it. And the research at medical institutions across the country helps explain why. Dr. Amy Arnston at Yale School of Medicine has studied what happens to the prefrontal cortex when routine and purpose are suddenly removed. The brain, she explains, is not designed for abrupt decompression. It is designed for engagement. When stimulation and social structure disappear overnight, the stress response system activates in ways that mimic chronic threat. The body begins responding as if something is wrong, because on a neurological level, something is. The architecture of a man's daily life, the commute, the tasks, the deadlines, the conversations in the hallway outside the conference room, all of it was providing neurological scaffolding that nobody recognized as essential until it was gone. But the neurological toll is only part of what researchers at hospitals and universities have documented. There is a loneliness epidemic among retired men that rarely gets discussed openly. The reason is not complicated. Men in this generation built nearly all of their friendships inside institutions, inside the office, the job site, the military unit, and the sports league. When the institution goes away, the friendships go with it, not because they were shallow, but because they were held together by a shared context that no longer exists. A 2021 survey by the Survey Center on American Life found that the number of American men who say they have no close friends has risen sharply over the past 3 decades. Among older men, the numbers are even more striking. Many retired men report going entire weeks without a meaningful conversation outside their household. And inside the quiet living rooms and dens of suburban homes across the country, the consequences of that isolation play out slowly. These are often the same men who spent their careers surrounded by people. They had coworkers, clients, supervisors, and crews they shared lunch with. Their days were filled with interaction, but retirement reveals something uncomfortable about the nature of functional relationships. Proximity is not the same as intimacy. Seeing the same people every day does not mean you know them, and it does not mean they will call when you stop showing up. Tom, a retired firefighter from outside Philadelphia, described it this way in a small online forum for retired first responders. He said he went from being part of something to being part of nothing in the span of a weekend. He said the boredom was manageable, but the feeling that the world had continued without him and had not noticed he left was something he did not know how to carry. Tom is not unusual. What makes his honesty rare is that he said it at all. There is a generational silence around this kind of grief that runs deep in the culture. Men who grew up in the 50s and 60s were taught, implicitly and sometimes explicitly, that emotional vulnerability was a weakness. You did not talk about feeling lost in the kitchen of your own home. You did not admit that retirement scared you. You said you were keeping busy. You said things were fine. And behind the closed door of the den, you sat in a recliner and watched the afternoon light move across the carpet and the hours pass. Their sons noticed. Across internet forums and comment sections and quiet conversations at family dinners, a pattern emerges. Men in their 40s and 50s describing what they saw happen to their fathers after retirement. The energy draining out slowly, like air from a tire with a nail in it. The hobbies that were picked up and then abandoned within a few months. The television becoming a companion in a way it never was before. The slow retreat from social life, not dramatic, not sudden, but a gradual turning inward that nobody in the family knew how to name or how to stop. One man wrote that his father used to build furniture in the garage every weekend while he was working. Beautiful, detailed woodwork. Bookshelves, rocking chairs, a dining table that took 6 months to finish. After he retired, he had all the time in the world to build. But he stopped. The building had always been a counterweight to the job, an act of creation that balanced out the repetition of the workday. Without the weight on one side, the other side lost its reason to exist. That observation carries a painful clarity. For many men, hobbies were never separate from work. They were the relief valve, the exhale at the end of a held breath. They existed in relationship to the pressure. Remove the pressure, and the valve has nothing to release. There is another dimension to this that is easy to miss. Retirement does not just remove a man's routine. It removes his audience. At work, someone noticed when he solved a problem, finished a project, trained a new hire. There was feedback, even if it was small. A nod from the foreman on the shop floor. A thank you email after a client call. These tiny affirmations accumulated into a sense of relevance that a man rarely thinks about while he has it, but feels acutely the moment it vanishes. At home, the feedback loop closes. You fix the gutter, and nobody evaluates the gutter. You organize the basement, and the basement does not care. The work is real, but the recognition is gone. And for men who spent their entire careers being measured and acknowledged, the absence of measurement starts to feel like the absence of meaning. But in living rooms and community centers and church basements across the country, there are also men who found their way through to something different on the other side of this transition. It did not happen quickly for any of them, and it almost never came from following the advice in retirement planning books that tell you to pursue your passions, as if passion were sitting in a drawer somewhere, waiting to be opened. The men who navigated retirement honestly tend to share a few things in common. First, they allowed themselves to grieve. They stopped pretending that everything was fine when it was not, and they admitted, at least to themselves, that losing their professional identity was a real loss. Grieving it was not self-pity. It was accuracy. Second, they found structure without defaulting to busyness. There is a difference between filling time and investing it. Volunteering at a food bank every Tuesday morning is different from reorganizing the garage for the third time. Teaching a trade to a younger person at a community college workshop carries a weight that alphabetizing a bookshelf does not. The men who found the other side of retirement tended to find roles where someone, somewhere, was counting on them again. Third, and this was often the hardest part, they learned to build relationships outside of institutions. Coffee with a neighbor on a Wednesday morning. A regular walk with someone from the old crew at the park near the high school. Not to talk about the old days, but to talk about today. Joining a group not because they were passionate about the topic, but because they were honest about needing connection. A retired machinist from Michigan named Gerald started showing up at a community woodworking workshop 3 mornings a week. He told the coordinator he was there to teach younger guys how to use a lathe. Months later, he admitted the real reason. He said he needed somewhere to be at 8 in the morning. He needed someone to say good morning to him and mean it. Gerald is not a motivational story. He is a man who was honest about what he needed and then found a quiet way to get it. That kind of honesty for men of his generation is its own form of courage. There is another part of this story that deserves attention, and it lives in the kitchen, in the living room, in the small daily negotiations of a household that suddenly has 2 people home all day for the first time in decades. The wives see it. They have been seeing it for years, often before retirement even begins. A study from researchers at Cornell University's Bronfenbrenner Center found that marital satisfaction frequently dips in the first 2 years of retirement, particularly when one partner retires before the other. The couples who struggled were not the ones who fought. They were the ones who had built their entire marriage around a rhythm of separation and reunion, morning goodbye and evening return, and had never developed a rhythm for sustained togetherness. One woman described it on a caregiving forum in simple terms. She said her husband followed her from room to room for the first 3 months after he retired, not to talk, just to be near someone. She said she loved him, but she could feel him disappearing, and she did not know how to reach the part of him that had gone missing. That image, a man following his wife from room to room through a quiet house in a suburb outside Cleveland, is not pathetic. It is the image of someone searching for connection in the only place he has left. And it is a reminder that retirement does not just affect the man who retires. It reshapes the entire household. The culture is slowly shifting. Conversations about male loneliness, about identity beyond work, about the emotional toll of life transitions are happening now in ways they were not happening 20 years ago. Books and podcasts and online communities are giving language to experiences that used to go unnamed. Men's Sheds, a movement that started in Australia and has spread to community centers in the United Kingdom and across North America, gives retired men a physical space to work with their hands alongside other men. The model is simple. Show up, build something, talk if you want. Nobody makes you share your feelings, but the option exists. And for many men, the sawdust and the sound of a bandsaw running is enough cover to let a conversation happen. But the shift is slow. And for the men who are living through this transition right now, sitting in quiet houses in quiet neighborhoods from Dayton to Dearborn to Philadelphia, the language often still feels foreign. Talking about feelings, about loss, about fear. These are muscles that were never exercised, and they do not develop overnight. There is a particular kind of sadness in watching a man who was extraordinary at his job become ordinary in retirement. He has no less value than he ever did, but he believed for 40 years that the job was where his value lived. And nobody, not his employer, not his culture, not even his family around the dinner table, ever corrected that belief, while there was still time to build something else alongside it. The retirement party ends. The plaque goes on a shelf in the hallway. The alarm clock stays silent on the nightstand. and a man sits at a kitchen table on a Tuesday morning in a quiet house, trying to remember who he was before he was useful. That is not failure. It is the cost of a story we told men for 70 years without ever thinking about the last chapter. If you found yourself in any part of this, or if it reminded you of someone you love, the video on screen goes deeper into why men stop talking as they age and what it takes to start again. Subscribe if this is the kind of content you want more of. I will be here next week.